Welcome to the Probate Realtor Show, your one source for selling and buying real estate through trust and probate. Hear directly from the best attorneys and trusted advisors on how executors and administrators navigate the probate process in and out of court. Being a personal representative or successor trustee can be a daunting task, and often beneficiaries don't have a clear plan. Let us help you make the right decision for your clients, your family, and your legacy. And now, here's your host, the probate realtor himself, Matias Baker Masucci.
Welcome, everybody, to another very exciting episode of our show. Today, we are talking to Debbie Babb. Debbie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here.
It's so good to have you. Debbie is an estate planning attorney, runs her own firm, which is Debbie Babb Law. And the first thing that I want to talk to you about, it's your journey, which I think, our audience always connects with people on a personal level. And I think consumers nowadays always feel like they want to know a little bit about the person they are hiring. So let's talk about, how did you enter the niche of estate planning?
Well, let's back up a little bit. I'm a third generation, a very proud a very proud Los Angeles third generation lawyer.
Wow.
My grandfather came out west and started his practice here. And then my father followed in his footsteps, and now here I am, and my brother's also a lawyer, and now I'm very proud to say I'm raising the fourth generation. My daughter's
oh my God, that's
right now.
That's impressive.
So I attended USC for law school here in LA and went to big law right afterward. And after practicing in real estate and eventually becoming a partner in a big firm, I was ready for something else. And my father and my brother had their own practices. And I was like, oh, I could do that too. And focusing on estate planning was a huge draw for me. I have 3 kids and I love being a mom. And I also love a list and getting a bunch of things done. And with estate planning, I get to help take care of my clients and take care of their families and get to be a trusted advisor. And I just love taking care of people, and I love helping people get things crossed off their to-do list.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Let me ask you a question. What about your grandfather and your father? What type of law did they practice?
My grandfather was, I think, mostly an entertainment lawyer.
Okay.
His biggest client was Jim Morrison. So,
oh wow.
Yes, there's some.
You're just gonna drop that bomb on me like that? Wow, Jim Morrison.
I didn't know we were getting into my grandfather's practice.
I love it.
Yeah. So, there's some fabulous family photos with Jim Morrison. And then my father, when I was growing up, I would say whatever paid my tuition, but really he does a lot of corporate and real estate work and really whatever his clients need. His clients have been with him for a very long time and just love him and trust him. And that's really the model where I saw that I wanted to be that person for people, although I didn't want to be spread so thin. I do a lot of there's a lot of real estate and estate planning.
Of course, yes.
And I love closing a deal. I love real estate. And so it's on the trust and probate administration side, there's generally real estate that needs to be sold or transferred. So,
right.
So I think my family really helped influence where, how I ended up in estate planning. And I got to give hat tip to my grandmother. When I was in high school, my grandmother was asking me what I wanted to do when I grew up. And my dad's legal secretaries were so classy. And that's exactly dressed to the nines and, in the office setting. And that's what I wanted to be like. So I told my grandmother I'd like to be a legal secretary. And then she said, well, why don't you be the lawyer? And I said, oh, that's a great idea. So So here
That's
I
awesome.
and I love it. I love what I do. I love helping my clients and protecting them. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about what estate planning is. And
Yes, absolutely. In fact, let's talk about the transition, since we talked about you getting out of law school, going into big law, becoming a partner, etc. So that was an aspect of your life, and then obviously you made a decision. I want to focus on estate planning, because, like as you said, it's something very important that everybody needs, and you don't have to fight with anybody, at least not until to get it for somebody to get it done for their estate. So let's talk about what estate planning is first, so we could give a general definition, and then let's talk about the importance that it has in a person's life.
yeah, so estate planning, it encompasses a lot. Part of it, your estate plan is your healthcare directive.
Mm-hmm.
Making decisions, if you're on naming somebody to make your healthcare decisions for you, if you're incapacitated, having it clear who you want, and having a backup name or two, so that if you become incapacitated, your family's not fighting about who gets to make this decision for you.
Right.
And then the doctors know who they're allowed to talk to and who to take direction from. It's just so much clearer when you've set forth your wishes. And hopefully you've talked to your agent or agents and explained, what you do and don't want. There's no way a single piece of paper can set forth all your wishes for when the time comes, just because you don't know what's going to happen. So knowing your values and what your general desires are is really helpful. And in this healthcare directive, you can say whether you want to donate organs, if you want to be buried or cremated, if you permit an autopsy, a lot of us have very strong feelings about it, and it's not something that comes up in daily conversation. So
Of course.
healthcare directive's really important part of it. Then a trust, especially in California. Well, I think throughout the United States, but in California, probate is very expensive. It's very, very slow, and everywhere throughout the United States, it's public. People can see what's been filed. I've met some great real estate agents that way, actually, because they watch what petitions are being filed so they can see if they can help sell the real estate. And so with a trust, why it's so great, especially in California, if you have real estate in California, or if you have financial assets over $184,000, then you're stuck going through probate. Also, if you have minor children, you really need to have a trust, because people under 18 cannot inherit money. So if you don't have a trust and a trustee set up to manage your assets, and you have minor children, then the court is going to do it and just hand the child a check at the age of 18. The guardian will be applying to the court throughout the years to get funds released for the care of the children. But whatever's left over at the age of 18, the court just sends a check to them. And Matias, I don't know about you, but if I'd gotten a large sum of money at 18, it
wouldn't have gone well.
And that's also a really lovely thing about trust, because you can leave assets to children or family, it doesn't matter what their age, and in a healthy way. We all, I think it's common in US culture to want to acquire a lot of assets and pass them on, but if we're not careful, if we don't leave the money for our children, adult children or minor children in a healthy way, it can really derail their lives. So with a trust is really a will-based substitute, but it allows you to avoid probate, and as long as you get the assets in the trust. Good,
which is called funding the trust, which is definitely something that we need to talk about. Before we move to that, if I may, it sounds like, obviously a comprehensive estate plan is made of a lot of parts.
Yeah.
There is something, we talked about the healthcare directive, we talked about the trust, obviously, and obviously also the care of the minor children, if there are minor children, all these components of the estate planning process. When somebody comes to you, do they fill out a questionnaire so that you know what their situation is? Kind of like they're telling you, hey, Deb, here is everything that I have to, help me figure it out what I have to do with it.
Right. Estate planning is so important to me. I really try to meet people where they are. Some people might be in a really bad position and they just cannot handle, just emotionally in a tough position, and they can't handle filling out some homework ahead of time. But I really do appreciate when the person can give me information about if they have a spouse, if they're divorced, if they're a second marriage, if there's children if it's a second marriage, is it a blended family,
Right. Yes.
on both sides. So getting family information, kids' names, birthdays, all of that information allows me to have a much more personal consult with the client too. And then as much asset information as a potential client is comfortable giving me. Some people don't want to reveal their whole financial life before they've even met me, which I completely understand. But the more information somebody can give me, the more productive our initial meeting can be. Because I do an 1.5 to 2 hour long meeting, and I don't charge for it, just to educate people. And I educate them about estate planning. I educate them about probate. I educate them about me and my system and how I do it. So, and so the more details I have about them, the better I can tailor that to them.
That makes sense. Thank you for sharing that. Let me ask you another question. You mentioned blended families. Now, obviously, there is a normal dynamic, and then there is dynamic. People life events change, so condition can change, and there could be stepchildren, et cetera, et cetera. When that situation happens, how are you able to adapt, in a sense, or let the people understand, that they may need to plan for, the next spouse or whatever the situation is? How does that roadmap look?
Well, families today are in every size, shape, color, configuration.
Right.
So I'm very used to the typical, traditional American family is, I think, not anymore, right?
Right.
Maybe 2 decades ago, maybe even a decade ago, but now, I can be planning for a same gender family. I can be planning for a man and a wife and 2 kids. I can be planning for, the blended family. So it doesn't really faze me, and it doesn't really look that different. With the blended family, it can be we have to be a little more sensitive about how we're leaving the gifts to the kids. And it really depends. It depends on people. In estate planning, there is no one size fits all. And
that makes sense.
It took me a while to get to that, but
yeah,
that's, I think, why that's my approach. And so that's why I don't have trouble code switching, right? It's
right.
not code switching, because it's just whoever is in front of me. And so
you adapt it to the person. That makes total sense.
Yeah. And just getting back to with the blended family, say let's take a man and a woman they have kids from prior marriages, and let's say it's a later in life marriage. Then, often the woman wants her separate property going to her children, and the man wants his separate property going to his children. But sometimes what happens, especially if the couple's a little younger, is they've both had children from prior marriages, and then they have a joint child. So it is very dependent on the facts and people's desires. So there's lots of ways we can plan.
That makes total sense. Let me ask you another question, which I think it's important and offer overlooked. The question I wanted to ask you is, when somebody comes to you and they also, apart from doing the estate plan, they also want your advice on who to name for the various roles. For instance, who should I name for successor trustee? Who should be the guardian of my children? Like, give me some advice, because I don't know. Should it be my parents? But what if my parents hopefully I outlive my parents, like things like that. So how do you guide somebody who needs help selecting the individuals who will, make those decisions when the person becomes unable to make the decisions anymore?
Right. So what I tell clients first off is we're only thinking about the next 3 years because this is a living, breathing document, and we're going to be reviewing it at least every 3 years. So Matias, I know you have young children. So right now, your mom or your wife's mom might actually be a very good guardian. Let's say your mom lives in Massachusetts. Okay. So while your children are so young, it would be okay for them to have to move to Massachusetts for your mom to raise them. But as your children get older, say they're in high school now, you're not going to well, first of all, your mom is going to be 15 years older too. So she's not going to be the right person anymore. And you're also not going to want to uproot them. So I say, you know what, we're only planning for the next 3 years. We don't know what's going to happen with the people we choose. And part of the review every 3 years is seeing if the guardians are still the right people, the successor trustees are the right people, the healthcare agents are still the right. They can die, you can have a falling out, they can move, they can be going through terrible things on their own in their own life and not have the bandwidth.
Right.
So we'll look at the options available in a client's life, and we'll talk through, like, on the successor trustee, are they good with money? Or if they're not, at least are they good at taking advice from a professional? Because a successor trustee can hire whatever help they need. So, and they really should hire professionals, because it's a fiduciary obligation they owe to the beneficiaries. Like in this case, in your case, let's say something happened to you and your wife, the successor trustee would be there managing your assets for the benefit of your kids. And you guys have worked hard. So we want to make sure they're well preserved and there for, your kids' college education. And
That makes total sense. Let's talk about you said you do the review every 3 years. So when somebody does the estate planning with you, do you reach out to them, or somebody from your office reaches out to them every 3 years? Do they get automatic reminders? How do you stay in someone's life after the estate planning is complete?
Yes. So this is where we make a point to leverage technology, right? Because there's no way we can keep up. And so as soon as we have the estate plan signed, we put in the signing date in our system, and then it will pop out reminders and to call. And we have an email where, like, it's a big list, maybe like 20 things on it. Has this happened? Has this happened? Has this happened? If any of these have happened, please reach out. So
that makes sense. That's great to know. Now, what happens if after somebody passes away and the time to do the administration? Do you also do that? Do you do trust administration?
I do non-contested trust and probate administration. And I try to do everything on the planning side to avoid families fighting. Like, my whole thing is I'm keeping families out of court and out of conflict. And so, sorry to jump us back to the planning side just for a quick second. So we're making really good decisions, right?
Right.
Then we're keeping that plan up to date. All these things allow us to avoid somebody dragging the family into court after there's been a death. Another thing that I do is, and part of the estate plan package, is to have a family meeting. If I'm planning for a later in life couple and they have adult children, I want those children to meet me, and I want to give an overview of the plan to the adult children, as much or as little as the couple, my client, comfortable sharing. But I find that when the adult children hear it from my mouth or the parent's mouth, there's conflict's less likely to ensue, because they've heard it at the same time from the parents. And often the adult children may be upset if they're not named as the first successor trustee, or feel like their parent doesn't love them as much. And honestly, being the successor trustee is a really tough job. So it's a lot of work and really pretty thankless. So you're better off not being named. But I also will explain in that family meeting how I don't let my clients name co-trustees, because when you have co-trustees, you really have no trustees if they argue and can't reach an agreement. And so I like to be the bad guy for my clients. I'll just tell the adult children, it's not because your parents love you, little Amy, less than, Joe, but this is, we just decided for various reasons that Joe's going to be the first successor and then Amy. So I'm trying every step that I can. I'm trying to reduce the potential for conflict. So getting back to your question, with the trust and probate administration, I do trust and probate administration. I don't do contested. That I know many wonderful probate litigators, and I'm very happy to refer them out.
That makes perfect sense. Something that you brought up that kind of caught my attention is the importance of communication. I didn't want to gloss over it because I think that's very helpful. Some people may not want to keep secret, but it just doesn't occur to them. I don't want to, they come and do the estate planning, and then it doesn't occur to them that they should tell people where they're putting their estate planning documents, right? Tell your kids where they are, or tell some trusted advisor. How do you coach people to sort of hey, you should inform the successor trustee that you selected that they are the successor trustee? Because obviously, you've seen, people do an estate plan and then they tell nobody, and it's in a safety deposit box somewhere. And that's, not very helpful.
Right. So what I do as part of my estate plan package is I draft letters to the people who have been named as the healthcare agent and the successor trustee. I run it by my client before sending them, but it's a very brief description of the job, and it tells them that they've been named and to reach out if they have any questions for me. And also it tells the recipient to let me know, reach out to me if anything should happen to my client. So we've got that going out right when the estate plan is signed. And then some people maybe right at that time aren't comfortable, but I'm meeting again with the clients periodically. And so these 3-year reviews. And so we'll bring that up, if they were resistant before, okay, maybe now. And then the good thing about these fiduciary letters is I have scans of all the documents. And so they don't really have to tell anybody where the estate plan is, because I have it as long as
somebody knows to reach out to you.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And that's also with the way I approach estate planning, it's not a one and done transaction. It's really a relationship. And so over time, I don't see how the client can't share that they've worked with me. There'll be, I don't know, a letter from me or something around the house, right? They'll find a business card, or just because it's not a one and done kind of thing.
That makes perfect sense. Now let's talk about wearing clean underwear.
Okay.
I want to, I visit your website, and I know you have some information that you share with people to educate. And I think this is the aim of this podcast. It's obviously to share information. with people who are seeking help in this particular area. So first of all, the title is amazing, but tell me a little bit about Wear Clean Underwear. What is it?
Yeah, so this is a book written by Ali Katz, who heads up this national network of estate planning lawyers that I'm proud to be a part of. She has really taught us how to do estate planning in a really comprehensive and holistic and heart-centered way. You're not going to get a cold approach from me. Like I think the lawyers in this network are very self-selecting because we really truly care. And anyway, so Ali wrote this book, and it's very easy to read. It's helpful for anybody, but very much designed for parents of young children. And it's a choose your own adventure, quick read. You can download it for free on my website, and you'll
give us the address so that we have it.
DBABB law.com. So dbablaw.com.
Perfect. So you were saying you can download the book and fill it out or go along to get educated about estate planning.
Yeah, it's free. You can download it for free. So
that's wonderful. Now there's something else. There are 6 mistakes family make for estate planning. Is it in estate planning? That's something else.
6 mistakes people make when they're choosing a lawyer to do their estate planning. So people don't know what estate planning is.
Right.
And so how are they going to find the right lawyer for them? Most people only know to shop around by price, but estate planning is really something you get what you pay for. And I've had clients come to me where they've gone to more of a trust mill lawyer, like somebody who's doing it really inexpensively, or they've done I have so many people do LegalZoom, and they just know it's not quite right. And we meet, we're having this complimentary, we call it a life and legacy planning session. And I'll point out things like, and the client, they already kind of knew, right? So shopping based on price is not something you want to do. You really need to compare apples to apples. And so when you're looking for an estate planning lawyer, like we've already talked about these 3-year reviews, you want to make sure that your lawyer isn't treating this as a one and done. The laws change, your family changes, your priorities change, your assets change. And big benefits of these 3-year reviews is we make sure assets that they've stayed in the trust, or any new assets get in the trust. I've had several probates where somebody inherited money after we did the trust, and they these are not estate planning clients of mine. They did a trust with another lawyer and then later inherited money, and the lawyer never reached out to them, and they didn't remember or didn't know that their inheritance needed to go in an account titled in the name of their trust. So now we're in probate. So the 6 mistakes, it's a guide, like helping you, like make sure that, and also you don't want to work with a generalist on estate planning. You want somebody who, it's a very niche practice. You want somebody who's doing this all day, every day. And part of that is, like, I'm serving so many clients, and I see these problems with other plans and the way other lawyers have done it, and learn from their scars, right? Like, so
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And mistakes in estate planning, you often don't learn about until you've passed, and then you're in probate court, and anytime you're in court, the opportunity for conflict really increases. And I don't know, I think I have 3 kids. I think the most important thing to me when I pass is that my 3 kids remain close. And so I want to do whatever I can to continue, for them to continue that bond, and going to probate court is not going to help.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I do the same for my kids. I'm always like, hey, you guys have to get along, be kind to each other. Remember, I am really, my mom used to do that. And I was like, why is she doing that? And then I understood it later in life. It's like, hey, I would love my four kids to always get along and be best friends. So definitely extremely important. And I think, this ties into exactly what we've been talking about. You make the plan ahead of time so that there's less guessing. When you do pass, your children will already have plenty of stuff to deal with. They don't need to decide who's getting that necklace. You can make those decisions ahead of time if you want. So
Right. And then when your one thing we didn't go fully through what a comprehensive estate plan is, but with minor children, we need to name guardians. And most people are only doing that in a will, but the will only comes into play when you die.
Right.
You can think of, extended periods of incapacity, date night. I don't want to go too detailed, but date night, drunk driver, coma.
Right, of course.
Like, we want to have your wishes laid out clearly so people know, what should happen with the kids right away. And we don't want any period of uncertainty for the kids. Like, the more questions you can answer ahead of time, just the better for everybody. And on estate planning, like getting back to that 6 mistakes people make, like, you got to compare apples to apples. Like,
right.
You can't just base it on price. If it's too cheap, the lawyer's cutting corners somewhere. And should we go for it? It's one thing, if you've bought a house, it's fine to DIY or go cheap on the paint. But on the electrical, you don't. You need good quality electrical because,
I agree.
The electrical fires are very common with faulty wiring and whatnot. So,
very true. Very true. Well, Debbie, we could talk about this for hours, and I think I'm going to ask you to come back on the show because we only really scratched the surface. But I wanted to thank you for your time. It's been such a pleasure to have you on the show. So you have shared so many useful information, and I really appreciate it. But I do really feel like we could talk about this for another hour.
Absolutely. I know. I'm very passionate, and I love to share and educate.
That is wonderful. Once again, thank you for being on the show. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we will see you in the next episode. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Probate Realtor Show. Find more episodes and interact with us at probaterealtor.la. That's probaterealtor.la. Listen, ask questions, and get results. Don't forget to like and subscribe. The Probate Realtor Matias Baker Masucci is a licensed real estate broker in California, DRE number 020547763. Any legal information provided is for informational purposes only and not for the purpose of providing legal advice. Contact an attorney to obtain advice with respect to any particular legal issue or problem. We make no guarantees as to the accuracy of any information. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.